everyone. You're very welcome to today's session of the Higher Education Authority Education for Sustainable Development Spotlight Series. Today, we're delighted to have Maynooth University sharing some of their ESD practice with us today. Just to note for everybody on the call that the session is being recorded and will be available on the National Forum Resource Hub early next week. We're going to have Q&A at the end, so please put any comments or questions you have in the chat or in the Q&A. So without further ado, I'd like to hand over to Professor Jennie Stevens to start the session today. Thanks, Jennie.
Great to be here and great to have a chance to share some of what we're doing at Maynooth. I'm Professor of Climate Justice at Maynooth University in the Icarus Climate Research Centre. I just joined Maynooth in June 2024 and have spent, this first year plus that I've been in Maynooth really cross-cutting university-wide, trying to get to know what's going on in sustainability, education, and research and community engagement throughout the university. So what I'm going to do is just give a kind of overview of some of the things that are going on at Maynooth from my perspective, and then we have one of our students is going to speak and a couple other colleagues, both from teaching and learning and other instructors and educators. So what I wanted to do is just kind of talk a little bit about this whole idea of integrating futures thinking about the future, and a more transformative lens of how we think about how society is responding to the climate crisis and the injustices of what's happening with climate and other ecological disruptions. And I want to acknowledge that, there's work going on at Maynooth, and including teaching, learning, and research and community engaged work with the Maynooth Green Campus, with Icarus, across all the faculties, as well as in the social sciences. And we have a particular focus kind of on bringing the social sciences and humanities and integrating all the work beyond the physical sciences. So what I want to do is just present some of the colleagues that I'm working with at Maynooth are really embracing this perspective on climate justice rather than just climate change. And one way that I like to identify what that means is that climate justice is recognizing that climate change is not a problem that could be fixed, or a problem that we only need to focus on climate, because it's actually a symptom of systems and structures that are causing ecological destruction and overshoot of the planetary boundaries in multiple ways. So climate is just one of the symptoms, and it's obviously a very important one. But I think this is an important reframing, and it kind of moves away from some of the traditional ways of thinking about climate, kind of in isolation of everything else and just focusing narrowly on decarbonization. So that's kind of an effort that's kind of widespread, and many colleagues are kind of embracing this alternative perspective. And this is from figure one in a book that I wrote in 2024, Climate Justice in the University, where I actually explore what does this mean and what could higher ed be doing in our teaching and learning if we embrace a climate justice paradigm shift. And it's really moving away from kind of individual and technological and profit-seeking mainstream approaches toward more collective action, social change, and well-being priorities. So what I wanted to do in the very brief time to talk here is just give a few examples of how in our teaching at Maynooth, several of us are integrating this climate justice perspective. And I will just say also the book, the Climate Justice in the University book, is open access, available if anybody's interested. And it's chapter 3 in that book that's all about learning and actually unlearning. And unlearning is the idea of letting go of frameworks and ways of thinking that are not serving us anymore. So just to mention that. So one of the examples that I want to talk about is an elective that we offer for our second year students in the undergraduate program, called Climate Action and Sustainable Development. So we actually call this course the same name that the new Leaving Cert. Many of you may know that in the Irish secondary education, there's a new Leaving Cert subject, Climate Action and Sustainable Development. And that program just started. And this year, I think there's over 50 secondary schools that are teaching this new curriculum. So I think all of us who are in tertiary higher ed, need to be thinking about students coming in with a lot more knowledge, those who've taken this Leaving Cert course. And so in line with that, we have called our second year elective course Climate Action and Sustainable Development, using the same words. And I'm co-teaching this course with Patty Bresnahan, who's a professor in the geography department. And what we're doing with these students is moving toward a semester-long team project approach. Like the main thing in the course is a project that they work on in teams. And we allocate, they apply, and they get to decide which team they want to be on. But they work on teams throughout the whole semester, imagining alternative futures. So we ask them to imagine, what would housing look like in 2050, or what would the food system look like in 2050, or the energy system, or mobility, or fashion and clothing. And so what we do is they pick a sector, and then they work in a team for the whole semester to explore what kind of transformation they can imagine to make the 2050 future more sustainable, more healthy, more equitable, rather than continuing on the way we're going, which is quite, kind of going in the wrong direction on so many things. So some of the best parts of this approach to teaching is teamwork. And we kind of emphasize how important it is to collaborate. And I have this 6 C's of teamwork, which is about collaboration, communication, everybody contributing in different ways, cooperation, coordination, and complementing each other, right? The idea is that people bring their own backgrounds and their own perspectives and their own insights. And in a team, you kind of work together to try to integrate and allow everyone to contribute, but in diverse ways. So the other thing I just wanted to mention is, really integrating systems thinking. And students are used to thinking about kind of, if you look at the iceberg model, just what's happening, what are the facts, what is it that we see at the top of the iceberg? But really, this approach of kind of future visioning really opens up space for thinking about patterns of behavior and the systems and structures and the mental models and like these deeper leverage points for change. So that's a big part of the teaching. And I also just want to mention briefly that we also integrate acknowledgement of how one of the reasons climate has been so hard to address is because there's very intentional strategic blocking of climate action. And this is climate obstruction. And there's this new global assessment on climate obstruction that was just released, that I'm one of the co-authors on. And this is a public resource. It's open access as well. And there's chapters in there about all different sectors and how people have been, mostly businesses and corporates, have been obstructing climate action for decades, very strategically. So it's an important piece for students to understand that it's not just, we don't have enough science or we don't know what to do, and that's why it's hard. It's hard because there's actually been very strategic blocking. So the only other thing I wanted to do before I hand it over to I think Lily, but I just wanted to mention a few of the degree programs that we have. We offer a micro credential in climate action and sustainable development. And this year was the first year we started this. And one of the things we're doing for this is actually recruiting teachers who are teaching the new Leaving Cert because many of them don't have, kind of want more resources, and there isn't that much out there. So that's one of the things, but this is a micro credential. So it's just, we meet in person 2 weekends, and then the rest is virtual online in an evening. So this is for full-time people who are working. The other two are masters in climate change. I wanted to mention we have a Masters of Science in Climate Change, which is run by our Icarus colleagues, which has more of a science, but some social science and community approach as well. And then we also have a master's in spatial justice in the geography department, which has a lot of climate justice and environmental justice into it as well. So those are the main things. We're working on other initiatives throughout the university to try to have more undergrad degree programs in environment, and also try to align we don't have, like some of the universities, we don't have a VP of sustainability to kind of coordinate us. So we're strategizing and trying to figure out how to best enhance kind of the connectivity and the initiatives across campus. There's a lot happening, but we aren't very well necessarily connected. But we're trying that with a few new initiatives that Allison's going to talk about as well. So I'll hand it over. I think, Lily, are you going to speak next, I think?
Okay, hello, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Lily Kilmartin-Gath, and I'm a second-year Bachelor of Arts student here in Maynooth University. And more relevantly for today's talk, I'm the Environmental Officer of Maynooth Students' Union, Aontas Mochlainn Maynooth. So I'm just going to be chatting a little bit today about what we're doing in the area of sustainability. Yeah, I think sustainability is one of the big issues that young people are focusing on and conscious of today. I think part of that is from an awareness point of view, which is brilliant, because I know climate change is something I've been aware of since I was in primary school. And then obviously that education has followed up through secondary school and now to college. But it is something that students are very concerned about, and it's something that they want to be part of the solution for. And ourselves in MSU as an organisation, we're very committed to sustainability and operating in an environmentally conscious manner. And I'm just going to be talking through some of our sustainability initiatives today. So I think our biggest one, and the one that's having the most impact at the moment, is our return bin charity scheme. So this was launched last year during Green Week in March. We have 4 of these big orange bins, as you can see here, which are official return bins. So essentially the way they operate is students donate their bottles and cans to these bins, and then we have a operations team member in MSU who's employed, it is actually myself, but to empty the bin and return the cans and bottles. And then the money that we raise through this is donated to our charity partners. So at the moment we have 4 of these bins in 4 different locations across campus, so they're nicely spread out across North Campus. For anyone who's not familiar with Maynooth, we have 2 campuses across the road from each other, North and South. So we have 4 North Campus at the moment. We are exploring options to expand onto South Campus. It didn't happen just with the initial rollout, but we are hoping to have one in place on South Campus in the near future, which would be brilliant because we do have a certain cohort of students who kind of don't really leave South Campus. And as well as that, it does get a lot of traffic over there as well. But it's a brilliant way to be raising money for charity. And we will, at the end of the year, we're going to tot up how much has been raised just from the return bin scheme. Because obviously we do have other fundraisers, but we want to see how much we've gotten just from this scheme. And hopefully it's a nice, tidy amount. As well as that, we had a bit of a breakthrough almost this year with our MSU Londis. So previously, our MSU coffee stations didn't offer any kind of reusable cup discount, which in 2025 does seem very strange, especially when we have other coffee shops on campus and they all offered it. So it was MSU that was kind of falling behind. But this year now, the MSU Londis, they had their coffee station was done up, and now they have a 20% discount for customers who bring their own reusable cup. So to support this and promote this, I put together a quick little promotion video that was shared across the MSU Londis and Green Campus Instagram, which I'm just going to play for you now. It's only a minute. Do you want to be more sustainable and save 20 cents on your coffee? This is the new Bewley's Coffee Station at the MSU Londis. Just bring your reusable cup, give it a rinse at the washing station, select your coffee, and pay at the till.
Hi, how are you? So what do you have there? And that's your own cup. So we have a 20% discount with your own cup. That will be $2.55. Thanks very much. Thank you. Have a great day.
Use reusable. Yeah, so that video shared across Instagram, it got a lot of views and interactions. So the hope is that will really drive home, like it will make people aware that we have this system in place, and then hopefully they'll be encouraged to bring their reusable cup. In fairness, the MSU Londis is the cheapest coffee on campus, but saving that extra 20 cents again is brilliant saving for students. And I will be going to the MSU Londis because I would like to see if I can get any data on kind of how many people are using the reusable cups. So then this is a Maynooth University project that I'm a part of as the MSU representative. So we have the Clean Air Campus project. So our aim with this is to work towards a smoking and vaping free campus. Again, this feels like one of those things that in 2025 we're kind of lagging behind because we're not a smoking vaping free campus, like some campuses. So this project is being spearheaded by Healthy Campus, which is another office in Maynooth University. At the moment, we're near to entering kind of phase one of, I suppose, a public-facing project, which is to run a survey to see what student opinion will be with regards to this. I do know personally I'm not a smoker or vapor, and it is something that irks me a little bit when you're going around campus and then you're just getting hit with the puffs of smoke from other students. So hopefully we get a strong response to the survey that this is a opinion that's held generally amongst the students, and then we can move towards putting in policy and then implementing smoking and vaping free campus. That's the hope, but this is definitely a longer term project that we are working on. And then finally, we have a kind of more community-based initiatives. So we have MSU alongside Maynooth Green Campus co-organise litter picks throughout the academic year. And we do get strong involvement, and as you can see from these photos, from MSU staff as well as Maynooth University staff, environmental society members, regular students, and then also even sometimes members of the wider community, such as members of Kildare County Council and Tidy Towns volunteers. It's a really great way to kind of give back to the community. This, the litter pick here on the kind of bottom right was run at Christmas. I'm sure many of you from the other colleges will have a similar kind of college Christmas. And so we did a litter pick in the evening to just kind of combat the peak littering that we were seeing from that event. It's not in any way endorsed by Maynooth University, I just want to make that clear, but we did want to still put in an effort to tidy up the town afterwards as a kind of environmental initiative. And then on the left here, this was our Green Week litter pick. So a bunch of us went out and we were litter picking on campus. So the one on the left was on campus, and then the one on the right was in the wider town of Maynooth. Alongside Green Campus again, we also organise Green Week each year. So I was involved in organising it last year, and my plan is for it to be even bigger and better for this year. So Green Week is held every year in kind of late March. And this is just a way to really promote to students sustainable practices and kind of climate justice and climate change, like climate change as a kind of problem in and of itself. And to just try and kind of get engagement from students in those areas so that they're helping combat these problems. So that is everything that I have for you all today, and I'll welcome any questions at the end of our talk.
Okay, so my name's Alison Farrell. I work in the Centre for Teaching and Learning, and I'm just going to chat a little bit about our community of practice. Thanks very much to Mark and Colin and colleagues in the HEA for setting up the series and for inviting us along today to share some of the things that we're doing. Okay, brilliant. Thanks, Mark. So like I said, I'm going to talk a little bit about co-creating a sustainability community of practice. I'm going to talk for about 5 minutes, and if you're interested in the work we're doing, please follow up with me or any of the conveners. So I'm just going to give a really quick overview of what it is, who's involved, where we've got to so far, what we want to do, and we would welcome any advice from colleagues on the call about what we should do next. So I can see there are lots of people with immense expertise on the call. So if you have any suggestions for how we build the community practice, we'd be very open to hearing that. So what is it we're using? Wenger and Trainer's definition of community practice, where it's communities of practice are groups of people who share a concern or a passion for something they do and learn how to do it better as they interact regularly. So that's our kind of working definition of community of practice. In terms of the tone of the group, we're very new, we're nascent, inclusive. We have a lot of expertise in the group, and we also have people who know very little. I would include myself in the ones who know a lot less. We have really great experts as well. We're enthusiastic, but we're also jaded. So we kind of think we can hold both of those things, that there's a great frustration working in this work and there's great passion in this work as well. It's very bottom up and collaborative, hopeful. My colleague Marion calls it messy. Community work is messy, realistic, and we're learning. And we're making the path as we go along. At the moment, we have 97 colleagues from across 40 departments and units, so anybody can join. And our intention as one of our next steps is really to reach out to students and to make sure it's a proper full community with staff and students. The conveners are from across a number of different departments. You can see them listed there. And within the group, we do have a lot of serious expertise and a lot of people who've been doing this work for a very long time on campus, who have kind of decades of experience. So trying to build on where we are and to move forward from there. What we've done so far is we sent out an email sort of towards the end of March, start of April, to see if anybody was interested in this. And the work that we've done is from that date. So we've set up the community. The conveners, that group I just showed with you, have met a few times. We've sent a survey out to members to try and get their sense of their hopes for the community and what it could do and be. We are determined to connect as best we can across the whole campus, and that even though we're bottom up, that really includes connecting with the senior leaders. So we've met with the University Climate and Sustainability Champion, that's the bursar, and the Director of Estates. We had our first meeting with members just this week, and in that meeting we were exploring the name of the community, and we know that all of the discourse is contested and vexed, so we're trying to agree on a name and to sort out what our primary purpose will be. We have a sense of our goals. First of those is to agree on the name of the purpose. We want to meet, we want to expand the membership. We're open to anyone who wants to get involved. We'd like to connect with other groups and other colleagues to learn from what's happening elsewhere, to share the good practice that's happening on campus, build a bank of resources, particularly OER, to engage in professional learning and contribute to policy. So these are our sort of ideas. They're not prioritised in any particular way at the moment, because everybody that's involved is also drawn in all kinds of different directions. We'll have to see what's possible, but there is great determination to try to connect all that's happening. So I think Jennie made a really good point. There's loads of pockets of excellent practice, but we don't often meet or share those ideas. So the community practice may give us a chance to do that in a professional but maybe informal way as well. And like I said, we'd welcome any advice you have on how to build the community or your experience of setting up communities of practice in this space. You can certainly put it in the chat or feel free to contact me directly afterwards. I'd love to hear from you either through email or we can arrange a call. That's it. I'm going to stop the share now.
Thanks, Alison. And Trish, if you're there, we can hand over to you.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm absolutely delighted to be here to share my insights on education for sustainable development, particularly through praxis. And I'm going to look at two little case studies and some of the things we're working on here in Maynooth. It reinforces really what Jennie was saying earlier on, the work that Alison and colleagues and Lily in the SU are doing here in Maynooth. But it's just a little bit of a broader scope of some of those things. Literally, to give you some background and the underpinnings to this work and my own engagement in it, it's really important because it's grounded in what I say and really reinforces what Jennie was saying earlier on about needing a paradigm shift, and certainly looking at needing to unlearn and relearn, focusing in particular on the interconnecting processes, because me as a sociologist, I would look at nature and society, and I think that the two of those need to be incorporated into future discourse. So my own background is looking at the challenges, looking at these interconnecting processes. I'm an environmental sociologist, but I focus in particular on the land, soil, nature, literacies, the connections of that, the benefits of that. I've looked at different practices right across the global north, and it's all about enabling transformation and change. So I'm just going to look at two examples then from Maynooth, and we go on to the next slide there, if that's okay. So the research then that, as I said, I'm interested in human-nature relations, soil, food, ecology, human health, and the physical, ecological and social dimensions of that, because they are interconnected. And I've worked with Green Campus. I'm part of the Sustainable Development Food Soil Research Group. I'm chair of that, part of a soil research cluster. I've worked with Cost Action Europe, working with scholars and professionals in the field interested in advancing this agenda, and I'm also part of the Sustainable Ecosystems Research Group in Maynooth. So we've gone to the next one there. So basically, when we look at the literature and we look at our own research, we can, you know, this isn't, this is general knowledge really at this stage, that the global food economy in particular is playing a critical role in the environmental crisis, and certainly in terms of loss of biodiversity, climate change, and even food insecurity. And what we're seeing is that the engagement, the impact that that has had societally is that people's engagement with food production itself has become increasingly marginalised, but more so that they're aware of, some are aware of, and we see this increasing, is this what I refer to as disembedding processes, where we're becoming more and more disconnected from the land, from practice, from knowledge systems, both current and indigenous and traditional knowledge systems, and but crucially the social relations that are inherent in all of those. So what we see in our research is that there's this disconnection, certainly a distrust in food systems in particular, and that is creating this increasing level of disenchantment and disembeddedness. Now, since 2008, we've seen a significant rise in demand right across the global north, from municipalities, local authorities, etc., looking for people looking for land to grow food, and it's particularly in cities. And I've written extensively about this, but basically what that is representing is this kind of sense of resistance, a desire to reconnect with land, nature, food, all those interrelated practices, but also that it's very much about reciprocity with the earth and creating those, rebalancing, I suppose, those nature relationships. So it shows us that there are new avenues for sustainable development, but that take into account the importance of those interconnecting processes. So if you look across cities, we see for people who are growing food, whether it's in allotments, community gardens, on balconies, in various contexts, that these growing cultures are emerging and they're giving rise or giving shape to these new material, social and the fabric of particularly of urban environments. And what they're doing is actually altering worldviews. And I think that's significant, because for sustainable development in future, it's the seed, for want of a better word, the seed has been sown already. So what we're seeing is these different levels that can be of knowledge systems and of desires and motivations that can be located along a continuum, ranging from a desire to grow organically to those who already have that traditional knowledge or conventional knowledge systems. But what we're seeing is there is a habitus, and for those who are not aware of that, it's an internalized disposition. It generates practices and so on. And what we're seeing that these are particularly influential factors that are giving rise to this middle cohort, which are primarily middle class groupings, and particularly females who are demanding access to land to grow their own food. So just the next one there. So this work is actually underpinned by Aldo Leopold, and he was an American philosopher. He's a naturalist, scientist, ecologist, forester, conservationist, and an environmentalist. He had a profound impact on the environmental movement, very much about holistic, I should say, ethics and the ethics of the land and food and the earth. He looks at ecosystems again as this dynamic interconnected system where the man and land should be actually seen as whole and as one. And it really brings me back to what Jennie was saying there about that interconnecting old and new approaches and this paradigm shift. So what he did in his work was emphasized the old, the biotic system. And he says that land is not merely soil, it's a fountain of energy flowing through a circuit of soils, plants and animals, so that there are these interconnecting processes, and it's about creating that balance between nature and man. Okay. So when we look at sustainable agriculture, particularly urban agriculture, because the majority of people, the populations are moving into urban environments, sustainable agriculture in any shape or form is about cultivating healthy foods in sustainable ways, obviously without compromising the environmental system, using particular principles that protect the biosphere and the equilibrium of the soil, so that plants are organically nourished, they can resist disease, and by extension, that actually impacts on human and ecological health. But what is happening is we have been brought under the control of capitalist modes of production. We remain subject to those global ecosystems, and that is creating these disembedding processes. So when we look at this research, we see that our health and the health of our planet are obviously inextricably linked, and that if we are, we've an abundance of research of the benefits and the potential of praxis, actual physical praxis, and engaging particularly younger generations and creating those connecting relationships where knowledge can be disseminated and skills can be shared, etc. And we're seeing the physiological and the psychological benefits of that, and we're measuring that at the moment. And certainly, for example, we have studies here, and Lily was actually part of a project that we did creating a podcast for students about the benefits of engaging in nature for learning and for their students' well-being, and that's part of that sustainability conversation. So if we look at the next slide, you'll see there's a significant amount of research that both myself and colleagues have been looking at. Here's just two areas that I've kind of reduced things to, from an ecological health to improving human health. And it's, for me, I think what I feel is really, really important is providing the learning opportunities so that people can acquire the literacies that are required to be able to enhance sustainable development. Because we know all of these, you know, we have the research there saying about, you know, telling us about well-being, about how it improves our health, how it reduces malnourishment, all these, you know, opportunities to grow food. But what's really missing in that link is the nature literacies and acquiring those literacies. So nature literacies really involve transferring scientific insights with practice, knowledge, skills to support the health, biodiversity and natural management of land. We're looking at improving societal resilience to mitigate those environmental impacts, and of course to have sustainable methods of food production as is important sustainable living. So what I'm two exemplars, just to give you an example of what I'm involved in, is one is with the Sustainable Ecosystems group here at Maynooth University, which is an interdisciplinary platform. It has been working since 2022. It was primarily commenced with the natural sciences, but our own engagement with this research is showing the importance of bringing in the social sciences. So our mission really is to work to support the health, biodiversity and productivity of the natural land managed environments, with the intention to improve societal resilience and mitigate those impacts, environmental impacts. What we're doing is we're looking at sustainable health under different core research areas or thematics, biodiversity, ecosystems, down from crop management, all to sustainable technologies, and even the environmental microbiology, sustainable health and well-being. And if you look at the next slide, you'll see that there's various exemplars where some of these have been mentioned before. With Lily, in terms of the Maynooth Green Campus, we're involved in the Biodiversity Week, Research Week, Science Week, Outreach, Communities, Higher Options and Maynooth Open Days. And we're even engaging with local authorities at National Climate Action Week with Kildare County Council. For example, we do various interviews on RTE. We're involved on a community level with nature walks with communities, currently doing documentaries, and it's also about getting that interconnecting, interdisciplinary focus, which we are really keen to work on. The next one here is just to show you kind of some of the thematic areas and really the publications, but it shows you the breadth and and scope and potential of an interdisciplinary platform and that type of paradigm. And so if we look at the UN's environmental programme, what they are talking, they're really, since 2022, have been advocating about moving cities towards more sustainable practices, including urban food systems, because of the circular economy, and about sustaining agri-based initiatives. So for us in Ireland, we have an issue certainly with access to land. I've done a study. If anyone wants access to that, I can give them that. But there are significant issues, and I suppose with the housing crisis, it exacerbates that. But it is important in terms of integrating these spaces to allow these initiatives to thrive, to address global challenges of food security, climate resilience, and so on. So just very, very quickly, so this really brings us to the point that we really need to recognise, and we are recognising, but on a broader level, on a societal level, we need to recognise the need for sustainable education and enhancing knowledge and skills, but particularly the literacies around that, because often people, when you ask them what a literacy is, they think it's like a functional literacy, reading, writing, but there are several layers to literacy which involve nature societal relations. So we need to actually really work on that. Certainly what we see is we are recognizing current agri practices are not sustainable. Traditional practices are sustainable, but at the same time, in a global economy or our own economy, they are not scalable. So the real dilemma there is to bridge that gap, to connect those strategies so that we can have this balance. And then finally, just to bring you to the Maynooth Green Campus, which I'm also involved in and Lily works with, I am the chair of the Sustainable Food and Agriculture Working Group. There's 8 working groups across the university. We have about 180 staff and students, members of this particular committee, along with there's affiliate groups with that. Each has its chair, each has its agenda, but together we're looking at sustainable development goals and enhancing biodiversity and sustainability on campus and even beyond, because a lot of the initiatives that each working working group works on, we work with community. So basically the Urban Agriculture Working Group is about advancing these sustainable development goals, enhancing knowledge, skills, nature-based literacies, and restoring these human society or nature society interconnections. And some of the work we do, so this is an example of an edible garden. It was an old grey space, a corridor basically that was unused. Wasn't really traversed by anybody despite the paths, but it was a horrible grey area, very little functioning. Sought and advocated for it to be transformed into a garden. And what we've created there is a transformative space that has actually allowed people to create these reciprocal relationships with nature. It's all about promoting sustainable relationship with the land, and it's a pedagogic landscape because we have these interdisciplinary networks and events ranging from World Health Day to even traditional events, bringing in the arts, literary arts, etc. Green Week, we have History Department, Gaelga, and we have the EnviroSoc. There's so many different events and activities, and the demand for this is growing exponentially. So there's a desire and a need, but there's also a fear that they need to know already. The beauty of projects like this is that we've brought school students in, and we've had some of our colleagues speak to them about climate, about, and they're getting to see the experts and speak to them and ask questions to enhance their schooling and their second level education. But one of the beauties of this is that you don't need to have the knowledge to actually engage in these practices. And often we see that is a barrier to entry for a lot of sustainable approaches. So this it transcends those barriers. It transgender, it transcends ethno-class divisions, everything. So, and I've even seen this in the case of, even in Belfast, it transcends the ethno-religious divisions up there. So the successful transition to sustainable agricultural practices do require us as educators, I would say, along with decision makers, investors, farmers, distributors, retailers, consumers, to work collaboratively. And I think that's really, really important. And one thing I noticed from the UN Environmental Programme was that education was left out of that definition or those needs analysis. And we really need major shifts. I would certainly agree with what Jennie was saying there about we need a paradigm shift. We need to unlearn and relearn. And also one argument which people mightn't agree with, but sustainability, when you ask people what does that mean, straight away they mean, oh, that's about tree hugging and that's about the environment. But it's so broad, and I think we really need to promote the strategies to take into account societal, human and natural growth, capital growth, because we do need an economy, and in also part of that is monetization. We can't eradicate that, but we just have to look at more sustainable models.
Thanks, Trish. That was great. And thanks to everyone that presented. Just there's a couple of things in the chat. I put a couple of links in for people that were being mentioned. Also, Brian put in a project, Trish, you might be interested in if you're not aware of it, called Community Roots in Cabra, which looks at intergenerational where people, I'll just read it out. Sometimes elder people can no longer look after the garden, give access to people without gardens so that they can grow food. So really interesting, lots of brilliant work going on in Cabra actually at a community level. So if anyone has any questions, please post them in the chat. But as always, I have a couple of questions. So I'm going to ask a couple, and maybe I'll go to give Trish a little break there because she was talking for so long. I'll go to Lily maybe, and about all the great stuff from a green campus perspective. I'm wondering, and maybe I missed it, or maybe it's something in development. Green campus initiatives often seem to rely on sort of volunteering and stuff. Have you ever looked at having the green campus activities sort of embedded into curriculum across different disciplines, so students who get involved also would get credit through assessments and projects? I don't know if that's something you're looking at.
Yeah, you're completely right. It's very reliant on volunteer work. I don't know if that is something that Maria, our Green Campus coordinator, has looked at, but it is a very good idea. So I will note it down and bring it back to her, because she'd be the woman for that. But it would be brilliant, because I have spoken to other kind of offices who run programs that then give students credits for their degree. So it's definitely something I can bring to Maria.
Yeah, no, and I think what you're doing with the reusable cups is that you mentioned about collecting the data. I think that's really important for two reasons. One is like it shows impact, it's evidence. And the other one is it could actually be something used for a student project going forward. So, you know, it's like when you do these great initiatives, you sort of forget to sort of harness them in multiple different ways, but it's great stuff, and it's great to have the student voice on today. So thanks a million, Lily. Alison, starting a community of practice, and I know there's lots of people who'll give you advice. They're probably not going to jump on today and do it, but I think what you're doing is really good start to the process. As you said already, there's huge expertise in Maynooth already. One thing that maybe thinking going forward is to get things to work on. So you're not going to get everybody working on the same thing, but what are maybe a group of 5 or 6 people passionate about that's of benefit institutionally, that would have sort of an impact, because people like to sort of be action orientated, I find, and still have that space for meetings and discussions and so on.
Yeah, I agree entirely, Mark. And people need a reason to get together besides just the conversation. So a few tasks would be something we can agree on, be really good. There's a lot of there was really good work done across all the faculties a few years ago that was based around teaching and learning fellowship. So we have a little bit of, like, we certainly have foundation spaces, and I think what would be really nice is to surface those or bring them to a broader audience. And even today, like, I'd never met Lily before today, so there's just like when you put together something like this, you realize, oh my goodness, there's so many things that you don't know about that are going on in your own campus. And I think our VP for Students and Learning, Tim Thompson, also mentioned that trying to get a sense of optimizing the fact that there is lots going on and making the connections across it. We know that university is notorious for working in silos. So, but I agree with you, Mark. You have to have a purpose to get together. Otherwise, it feels a little bit aimless. Yeah.
Yeah. People will only go for the coffee and croissants for so long, and then they'll have to get an action.
True enough. Yeah.
Thanks, Alison. Trish, huge amount in that presentation. Thanks a million. And, you know, the pedagogical landscape or campus as pedagogy is a really interesting, because you often hear terminology like living labs is sort of thrown out for lots of different things. But I really like that sort of approach, that the campus and all our campuses across the country should be a pedagogical instrument. I suppose the challenge, and like yourself and Jennie, unfortunately Jennie had to jump off for another engagement. The challenge that both yourself and Jennie outlined is the disconnection and distraction. And I suppose, I wonder, do you have any thoughts on how do we address that across the disciplines? Like, first making, and Jennie gave an example, making students aware of the distraction, and then how do we move towards the reconnection? And having those spaces is fantastic, but I'm thinking of how many students, and you outlined that there's a lot of access, but how do we do that in a sort of holistic way? I'm not sure if you have any thoughts on that.
Well, I think really when we look at the science, there is a significant gap or divide between the natural and the social sciences or the arts and humanities. And even on an ontological perspective, I think that gap has to be, there's an awareness there, but still, even epistemologically, that is, it's quite diverse, but there has to be an ontological shift, first of all. I think also integrating, I think it's about how we see nature and ourselves, because we see them as two separates, but actually we're one. So I think that is a fundamental shift that's needed, because if we always separate ourselves from nature, we make nature something that is thing-like. It's a thing-like entity and it becomes a commodity like everything else being the operative word. And I think we need to bridge that connection. So that's kind of, I think, a starting point. I think integrating that into curriculums, exactly like Alison was saying, having those resources there, having, you know, it's not that people don't want to. I don't think there is a huge desire to integrate sustainability into right across curriculums, but it's having the resources to do that, knowing how to do it. How do I disseminate literacy on, and I make sure that our students are acquiring the literacy through the lens of my subject. I think maybe that's an area, a starting point, and then taking it from there. It's like any process, like nature, developing teamwork, you know, like Jennie is doing on the master's program, getting students engaged, getting them to work collaboratively. You know, and I know Paddy Bresnan, I don't know if anyone here is aware of Paddy, but Paddy has been instrumental in Maynooth and beyond with his work. And I think having that imaginary or reimagining of nature and reimagining of the earth is really at the core of what we do as educators and facilitators of knowledge, rather than a top-down, that we work in collaboration with each other because we all share this earth.
Yeah, no, very good. And it's all what was interesting, just what Alison mentioned as well, is the messiness of it. And it is messy. But in a lot of ways that's the fun of it too. You know, like it's obviously a very serious topic, but there's the messiness is where the richness is, I think.
Can I just answer that? I think we're so programmed to think linear, in a linear fashion. Nature is not even like that. And when we look at, we don't like the messy. We don't like that. It is a challenge sometimes. But it's a good thing, because we're unlearning the way we normally, you know, like when we set out plans of action, here's, you know, what we're going to do synchronously or whatever. Here's what we're going to do in sequential order. But I think the process is more important. It's the process and the learning and the interconnections and learning about those interconnections over time, but rather than skipping by them and saying, this is our objective, we need to get to that outcome. Right, we've done that, box ticked. I think we're missing a lot. I think we're missing that interconnection by using the same model or framework. So the messiness is good.
Yeah.
Did you want to jump in, Alison?
I was just going to say that we're working on, we're working on an education framework in Maynooth at the moment. I see one of our expert external advisors on the call as well, Dr. Udo Sullivan from UL, and part of that framework is to identify what it means, what a Maynooth University education means, and social environmental justice, sustainability is going to be part of that framework, and we hope that will help colleagues when they're developing their programs or their modules to have those kinds of resources that you're talking about, Trish, so that if I am keen and I want to integrate sustainability, how do I do that? Where can I start? So building from the education framework, the work that's been done across the faculties to identify what is good practice in teaching and learning, and sharing those things so that they're ready for folks who are interested in doing the work. I think that's really important, that people, if there is a readiness, that we're there to support that and to help people to get started. Because somebody said on the call today, you feel anxious because you feel, and you've said this before, Mark, I don't know enough, or I'm gonna, I'm ignorant, I'm gonna misstep because I don't have, I don't know the right language, I don't know the right thing to do next. But that allowing for people to make mistakes with good intentions, I think that's also very important. So the process matters. We always talk about process here, but the process does really matter.
Yeah, and I think that's really important. Like we're all learning on the journey, and if the more collaboration we can do across the sector and across each other, and especially the work the Maynooth are doing with community groups, it's like learning from communities. and learning with them as you go along. Like as Trish says, it is a sort of a journey and a process. So there's no right or wrong way to do this. But I just think for people who are maybe just starting off around the call, you know, take that first step. That's what it's about. And there is a real genuine appetite for people across the sector to share what they're doing and collaborate. So yeah, look, that was a great session. Thanks a million to everyone who gave up their time to speak. Really interesting, you know, different perspectives, and this is what the Spotlight series is all about, you know, sharing different perspectives and different aspects to education for sustainability practice. Just to highlight that, you know, obviously we have a couple of more sessions to go before we finish the sessions in total. The case studies call is still open if you get it in today, because it's closing today. And OER call is as well this afternoon or this evening at 5 o'clock. And next week, we're going to have Hibernia College sharing some of their practice. So we're really looking forward to that. So thanks again to everybody who joined today. Thanks to all the speakers for taking the time to prepare and present a great session. Have a great weekend, everybody.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks, Colin.
Thanks very much. Thank you.